morning and welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's panel, and thank you to the Summit for hosting us this morning. My name is Lindsay McIntosh-Toll, and I'm the REI Local Experiences Coordinator based here in Portland, Oregon. Before I introduce our panelists and get us kicked off, I just wanted to add a couple of housekeeping things for this virtual panel. One, we do encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat box as well as to ask questions for the panel. We will have some dedicated Q&A time at the end, but we'd also be happy to answer questions throughout the presentation, the panel, and so we invite you to submit questions at any point. Also, just one quick shout out, it has come to our attention that while the website and agenda for this panel listed as an hour and a half, which is what we are planning on, the calendar invite listed it as an hour. So we are hoping that we are planning on continuing the discussion until 10:30 and hope that you can all stick around. If not, I do want to just remind you that the session is being recorded. And so if you do have to leave, you do have the option to view the end of it later on. Otherwise, just thank you again so much for joining us today. As I mentioned, I work with REI Experiences. At REI Co-op, we believe that living more of our life outside is fundamental to a life well lived. We seek to inspire and enable a life outside for everyone, and we are deeply committed to working towards a reality where everyone has the opportunity to feel, to equitably access the physical and mental health of benefits of time outside, and also to be themselves and to feel safe and welcome as they find their own place in the outdoors. In my role with REI, I'm extremely fortunate to get to work with our community partners who are working across Oregon and beyond to not only steward our trails and natural areas, but who are also actively working to create that welcoming, accessible environment for all people. And I am honored to be sharing the screen with representatives from 3 of those organizations. We have the Forest Park Conservancy, Love is King, and Trailkeepers of Oregon, who are collaborating in a variety of strategies centered around this really important topic. So I'd like to take this opportunity to just invite each of our panelists today to introduce yourself, your organization, and your role. Chad, would you like to start?
Hi, my name is Chad Brown, president founder of Love is King, and we're about dismantling racism, ignorance, and bigotry and hate in the outdoors, and creating spaces and wild spaces safe for BIPOC to be able to roam without the aggression that we find in our day-to-day lives, and also for all people as well. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. And Renee, we'll hand it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Renee Myers. I'm the Executive Director for Forest Park Conservancy, and our role as an organization is to help protect and restore Forest Park and ensure that everyone has equitable access to the amazing health, mental, physical, spiritual, all the great benefits that Forest Park provides. So. Thank
you. And Susan.
My name is Susan Shen. I'm the Stewardship Manager for Trailkeepers of Oregon, and our mission is to enhance the hiking experience in Oregon through stewardship, advocacy, outreach, and education. And I'm super happy to be here.
Awesome, thanks. And Vicente.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vicente Harrison. I am on the Trailkeepers of Oregon Board of Directors. I am the chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and we want to make sure that we're bringing those values, that vision and lens to the organization to make sure, again, that these outdoor spaces are accessible for all, and we have people that can, get to enjoy all of the spaces that Oregon has to provide.
Fabulous. Well, thank you all for being here today and for sharing your stories and what your organizations are working on individually and together. I'm really excited to be having this conversation today. All right, so today we are here to discuss dismantling systemic racism and making the outdoors a welcome and accessible place for all people. And in order to understand what that work that needs to be done and the change that must be created, it's really important for people with different lived experiences to have an understanding of the reality of the discrimination and exclusion that people of color and other underrepresented communities can face while trying to spend time in the outdoors. Vicente and Chad have both offered and agreed to share some of their personal experiences and how those experiences have shaped their relationship to the outdoors personally as well as professionally. So Vicente, we'll go ahead and start out with you. And we have that kind of very straightforward question for you, but what has your experience been? Do you feel safe and welcome when you're in the outdoors?
Thank you for that question, Lindsay. And I think this is a question that both Chad and I will kind of go in different directions in terms of our experience, but being from the Midwest, coming out to Oregon, and just the history of the outdoors as it pertains to people of color, now I can say that I feel safe outdoors. And that's been a journey to get to that space. Do I always feel safe outdoors? That's another conversation. I think that, again, just the history of this country in terms of the outdoors, whether it be access to water and pools, in the history of the segregation of pools. To this day, I'm almost ashamed to admit I'm gonna take some swimming classes soon, but I don't know how to swim. I can swim just long enough to survive. And that's because, my parents they weren't really proactive in getting us to pools, because they grew up in a generation to where pools were segregated. And even when there were access to public pools from people of color, they weren't the best conditions, or you run the risk of kind of being frowned upon just for even being there. So we could carry that example into just the outdoors in general. Outdoors is a place where, again, when you just talk about the history of the country and the cultural trauma that people of color have gone through, and particularly African Americans, going to places that are desolate or reserved or away from, safety or help was something that is just, it wasn't comfortable. It still is not comfortable to a large group of the population. And that's why I really value and respect organizations like Love is King, that is proactively trying to get more people of color out in the outdoors in a safe environment under supervision and care and education that's going to make them feel comfortable in taking advantage of this experience. But I think that a part of my passion professionally, I work for Portland Parks and Recreation. And, again, the name of the game for Parks and Recreation is having people invited to our outdoor spaces. One of the things that I learned is that, there's just a lack of representation in a lot of our outdoor spaces, in particular when we get to more natural areas or areas that, again, are away from the urban environment. So in short, I think that I personally feel more comfortable in the outdoors. I often take my family out on, exhibitions, if you will, or just nature adventures. And I always have the wisdom to kind of look over my shoulder, if you will, just to make sure, am I feeling invited? Does this feel safe? Does my family feel safe? Now, my kids really don't know much of a difference, right? They grew up in an area, in a generation where we had our first African-American president. The first president they knew was an African-American, which was, just mind-blowing from my standpoint in the generation that I grew up in. So they don't really know any different, but I would be a failure as a parent if I didn't educate them on that history. So we're all kind of making sure that, we're keeping ourselves safe, where we're acknowledging where we're at all times. There's an element of that just from being in the outdoors in general, but there's more so an element of that when you talk about feeling welcome in particular spaces. And I'll close with, when you talk about the political climate of the country over the past couple of years, that really raised the flags of that comfort level in the outdoors. Like when you're going to different areas and you're seeing, people, we've seen what happened in Charlottesville. We've seen what happened in different sections across the country. Like, that doesn't help the cause of making people feel more comfortable in the outdoors. Probably set us back, at least, a whole decade in terms of people's comfort level. So I feel comfortable. I think organizations like Chad and organizations like Forest Park Conservancy, definitely Trailkeepers of Oregon, are working hard to make sure that comfort level is authentic, and that we're educating ourselves and the public on making sure they're continuing to be invited to these spaces. But I think there's a lot of work to do in terms of all people of color knowing that they have access to open outdoor spaces, and again, making sure they're educated enough to know that they are welcome to come, and there's people that are going to advocate for them to be there.
Great, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And you mentioned that in addition to being with Trailkeepers of Oregon, you're the health, safety, and emergency manager for Portland Parks and Rec, with nearly 10 years with the agency, having started out as the first African-American full-time park ranger. What was that experience like? What has that experience been like for you?
Another good question, Lindsay. It was a unique experience, to say the least. When I came into this industry, there were all, quite frankly, just white males in the industry. There were very few women park rangers, and there were some African-American rangers before me, not full-time. They came on for a season, maybe a couple months at the most, and then they would go on to other opportunities because they didn't feel that comfort level. So I was driven and inspired to stick with it. I think that as I saw the lack of representation in the outdoors, as I saw the lack of representation in the outdoor spaces in our community centers, at our pools, I wanted to be a stronger advocate for them seeing someone that was in the industry that looked like them to help bridge that gap. So that experience was unique. There was a lot of people that thought I would just pass through and, go on to something else. I started out as a seasonal ranger making $11 an hour, and I left a job that I was being paid much more than that. But I really wanted to get into something different. I wanted to move into an industry where I could access the outdoors more freely. As I mentioned before, my father was from Mississippi. He was a farmer in Mississippi. His dad, my grandfather, was a farmer. So being in the outdoors was always a part of me, but I never got a chance to really explore that professionally. So I was always in public safety, going into a ranger where I could be outdoors, excuse me, and educate people in terms of the assets that they were at. It was just very alluring to me. So that inspired me to just continue on the track. That experience, again, I had a lot of naysayers. A lot of people thought I was just going to pass through. I actually got passed up on the first time I applied for a full-time ranger because they said he's not going to stick around. We're going to give him the job. He's going to go somewhere else. But again, I was determined to persevere. I wanted to be that representation for our industry in terms of park rangering and in outdoors. And so that experience was unique, but I'm here. I'm still here.
Well, I'll say for one that I'm very glad that you're still here. And thank you so much for sharing that very unique experience and journey with us. And kind of as you've been sharing your story, I know we've been having a couple images sort of popping up next to you on the screen. Hopefully people are seeing those. And going along with both, your professional experience, your personal experience, and then your professional experience as a ranger and that journey. That last shot that we also just had up is one that I'd like to ask you about, which is that in addition to all of your other pursuits and being just an avid outdoors person, you're also a children's book author and have published My Nature Exploration, which shares a wonderful story about a little boy named Harrison exploring his backyard. And you mentioned before that you're very dedicated to spending time outside with your family and creating that experience for them. I would just love to have you share kind of a little bit about that book and what led you to write it.
Yeah, sorry. I think I'm supposed to be controlling these slides, but I forgot about that aspect.
That's all right.
I apologize, but
not a problem.
So My Nature Exploration, again, was about this pursuit, this track that I was on in terms of being a park ranger, seeing the lack of representation, seeing that our community wasn't accessing these spaces. And when you talk about the African-American community, there's a lot of health ailments that plague our community, if you will, in terms of high levels of stress. I mentioned that cultural trauma, hypertension, high blood pressure. These are a lot of things that, have an impact on the greater community. So I was going to these outdoor spaces, these beautiful, as Renee mentioned, Forest Park is just such a beautiful landscape. And then throughout Oregon, if anyone's been to Oregon, I think all of us on this presentation have, very well experienced Chad, even beyond Oregon, just the beautiful landscapes that are out there. And I just seeing the lack of representation. I was at a training when I was becoming a Leave No Trace master educator in Tucson, Arizona. In Tucson and Saguaro National Park, the trainers were challenging us on what are you going to do? what are you going to take back to your community to really advance, making sure people have access to the outdoors? So this was continuing to go around in my mind, like, what will I do? What can I do? And so I said, somebody should write a book. I was like, somebody should write a book. You know, there's just not, you know, if you get kids at a young age to appreciate the outdoors, there's somebody should write a book about, you know, a kid experiencing that from an early age, and hopefully it'll continue to stick. I think there's data that presents that if a kid, you know, I think National Parks offers free passes to kids, I believe around the 3rd or 4th grade, to say that if they experience that outdoor experience by 3rd or 4th grade, they're more likely to return and enjoy that experience as an adult. So I said, somebody should write a book about a kid enjoying the outdoors, and that would be a good introduction for them. And it has to be real. It can't just be any old book. Like there's very few people of color, more so now than in the past, that can just jump up and go to Yellowstone National Park, or jump up and go to one of the, you know, beautiful national parks throughout the country. So I wanted to, anyway, long story short, that person writing the book ended up being me. At first it was an idea for somebody else. And then I said, hey, you know what? I can be the one. And I got a lot of encouragement from my sister, who was an author. I just started jotting down a book. I started writing down like what the concept could be. And that slowly but surely led to the book being published. So I wanted to start in a practical place. Nature's never far away, never far. In your backyard, in your yard, in your garden, in your neighborhood park is a place where you can start, and then you can build from there to greater adventures, to greater explorations down the line. So this little kid, he began to go out in his backyard, you know, just a regular kid, just exploring. And he began to discover different aspects of the outdoors that he just never really paid attention to before. And I think that's how it happens for all of us. If we get to the space, nature will take care of the rest. Nature knows what it's doing. It's been doing it for thousands of years before we got here. Our role now is to be good stewards of it, take care of it, make sure we're making people aware of what's not destroying the outdoors, or loving the park, or loving the asset to death, even on how we live, and those environmental educational components. So this kid started in his backyard, and this was the first edition of him in his backyard. But the second edition is going to be coming soon. He's going to go to his first camping trip, and you'll find that out at the end of the book. So I'm actually going this weekend. I'm going to Nebraska, and I'm taking some kids on a camping trip. And this book is kind of the premise of that experience. They're going to go on a camping trip. They're going to learn aspects of camping. I have a couple Girl Scouts that are coming, and talking to them about, you know, all we can do at this time of year is roast some s'mores. But again, giving exposure and experience so that they'll want to. Nature's going to do the rest. They're going to want to return to that environment. And when you do it the right way, it's something that can be appreciated and enjoyed for years to come. So that's why I was inspired to write the book. And that's just a little tidbit of what the book was about. But there's 4 more editions coming. He's going to camping, he's going to the beach, and he's going to the forest. And hopefully by the end of there, we'll have thousands of kids of color that are inspired to take that same adventure.
Awesome. Well, I'll just say I can't wait to see the next 4 editions. I'm thrilled they're coming, and I'm going to encourage anybody out there that has kids in their world that this is a fantastic book and a great introduction to the outdoors and just being outside. So, Vicente, thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing all of this amazing work that you've done in so many different realms to help advocate for and open up the outdoors to people. I really appreciate you sharing your story today.
Thank you, Lindsay.
And with that, I'd love to hand it over to Chad. And Chad, just would love to invite you to share kind of some of your experiences and how that has eventually led you to the creation of Love is King. And so we'd just love to open it up to you at this point, please.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. Thank you. Yeah, just to start, just to kind of give a little background. You know, I'm not a stranger to backcountry and adventure. I come from a family from Texas that my mother and my father was both into the outdoors. My father, he was a hunter farmer. My grandfather was a hunter farmer. I used to spend a lot of time in the fields with my mom and my dad and my grandparents. Growing vegetables to me watching my dad, wrestle a bull down in the pasture, and spend a lot of time actually, and going to black rodeos as well, and that was my world. And, I've always heard the stories of the danger of going into the outdoors. And my father and my mom used to talk about that a lot, but I was actually protected with my family until I started getting out into the world. And my mom would always pray for me. My father would always pray for me, etc. He's always saying, don't go here, go to where there's much more public and wild spaces. I mean, public, community people, etc. And, and so I, would hear that. And as I pursue on into the outdoors and got into mountaineering and the more adventure that came, the older I got, through my entire life. But when I came to Oregon, it was a different experience. And I think Oregon has put me, has definitely gave a different lens to what my father and my mom has warned me about and has prayed about. And I continue on going into the outdoors and fly fishing and bow hunting and but over a course of time I started to experience many different racial challenges that was coming my way. I would park my rig and come back, and uh, my brakes are dismantled, completely torn out of my vehicle. I had spray paint with the N word, on my vehicle as well. And then I think really what's the ultimate is, right 25 miles from where I live in Portland, I never thought in my life that I would have to uh, duck and dive and run away from someone shooting at me on the river. And so, it's been quite a roller coaster ride of the aggression that I have personally experienced in Oregon. Not that far in the back country. It's pretty much around the city area, and it has done a number on me. Where, especially that time when I got shot at, it really messed me up internally and mentally. I had to do a lot of counseling through that, and just to work through my anger, because I went through many different layers of anger at everybody, anger at society, anger, at what's going on, but I also know that my story of my fear of the outdoors lies in the thousands of stories of many African Americans of just all BIPOC period, and where their stories are coming at many different angles, but at the end of that story, it ends with fear. Period. And fear lies in women. It lies in elderly. It lies in Hispanic, Native American. When you can open up that space and allow people to feel comfortable to speak into that space about what they really feel like, you start to see that there's a tapestry of fear that's happening. And a lot of it is generational racism, and then a lot of it is present today, just like what Vicente was talking about, the political climate. That's a big deal, and it crosses over quickly into the outdoors. The same folks that, like the po' boys, you never know, but there could be amongst of hunters from there, bow hunters and hikers that loves the outdoors just as much as you. They just don't like BIPOC people, or they have an issue with where we what we do or what we believe in, etc. And so when we're talking about the outdoors, we got to be looking at um, a crossover between outdoors and urban, because they both run straight in line with each other, and they marry each other really, really well, because the people that are in the urban world are the same people that crosses over and pursue their recreations in the outdoors, that can collide with us while we are pursuing our personal ventures, or even with family, and so through Love is King, that's really, as I said earlier, on the mission, but it is about the organization. It's about really, it's taking a stand, acting out in the art of love. It's like picking up the work that Dr. Martin Luther King has left, and we're picking that work up to move forward. And when you learn and read about the writings of Dr. Martin Luther King, he's always talking about all people. He's always talking about taking a stand together. He's always talking about, the act of love for one another. And that's Love is King. It's about taking a stand for one another, stepping in where you need to step in, where that person cannot speak for themselves, or that person has a hard time speaking for themselves, and they need your support. We do a great job in our society of walking away and are turning the cheek and looking away. Love is King is about not looking away, stepping in and supporting that person that needs that support greatly. And what that is that person pretty much need, everything from, navigating the outdoors to finding a space to feel comfortable. Love is King does that by making relationships and partnerships, etc., in the act of love, and like-minded folks that believes in the mission to take a stand, creating that wall of love to step in and dismantle what's in front of us, basically. I always say to folks, especially to allies, if you feel extremely uncomfortable, and even to myself, and it makes you second guess yourself, it makes you stutter or stutter step in that process, then you're actually in the right place, because that's where the real work comes in, and that's where the real work is needed for you to step in, me to step in, and do what we need to do to continue to try to make these places safe. I continue to move through the outdoors. I can't say I don't feel safe at times, and sometimes I do feel safe. It kind of depends on where I go. But when I go into outdoors, I have to go in to protect myself, and I have to know how to support myself individually, just in case something happens to me. That's the life that I live, and that's the life that I have to live. Just because the fact that the reality, there are people that does not like my skin color. They don't want to see that. Period. There are people that does not like the way I talk. The way I talk it opens itself to accents. People have problems with that. Native American accents, Hispanic accents, etc. These are things we cannot erase. These are things that we cannot change. These are things that is part of us. And what we have to do is we welcome that. And my welcome and how I embrace that is the same welcome embrace of the community that I keep along in the House of Love is King and the partners. We embrace it all, and we show up. We show up where we have to show up and where it's needed for us, and we step in and we move forward. So that's the my I would say my high level piece of professional talking about the outdoors and the systemic and breaking this down. It's really, through Love is King is the act of love, and that's something that's lost, and Love is King's about reawakening that. Even the folks who has forgotten that, but reawakening that spirit, because that's what's needed today to fight and challenge that political climate. And so, yeah, there you go, Lindsay.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you sharing those experiences. I know that I'm incredibly sorry. It's always hard to hear that that is the lived experience that people are continuing to have, and as you said, so close, in our home state, in our home place. But really appreciate both your courage in sharing those stories, but also just everything that you're doing, carrying forward to help, help handle those situations, help empower others to handle those situations, and just thank you for all of that, and for being here and sharing that with us today. At this point, we'd love to talk a little bit more about Love is King and about the partnership with the Forest Park Conservancy. And I believe, Chad, you've got a video that you were interested in sharing. To start off, that would be a great next piece, I believe.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Through Love is King, we have a couple programs, actually two initiatives of the program. And one is Heritage Events, and the other one is Operation Rome. They're both tailored to get people, BIPOC, into the outdoors safely and be able to create these wonderful, beautiful memories. Through that, through these both initiatives, we have to partner uh, and align ourselves with the right type of organization or company or government entity to order to make this work. It's a collectively joint effort in how we work together. And I would like to share one of the videos actually, which is centered around our second initiative, which is Operation Rome, and it's working with Forest Park Conservancy through their leadership team. And how we work together is we're fostering leaders, we're fostering BIPOC leaders, and we're getting them to step out beyond their comfort zone. And I'm facilitating um, a leadership program in the wild around these BIPOC leaders, and it's really a phenomenal experience. But I tell you one thing is what's really interesting through the support of Forest Park Conservancy is it also creates a safe net that the young leaders have this opportunity to unpack. And I think that's to a lot of decision makers out there. I think that's that next step where decision makers that are running different programs need to pay attention to and understand that when you're working with BIPOC leaders or just BIPOC period, there's a different type of unpacking that happens, and some of that unpacking is a frustration of their voice that has never been heard. And when you allow that space for them to grow, and for them to feel comfortable, that unpacking starts to happen all at the same time. And through the support and the build and the relationship that we have worked with the Forest Park Conservancy, it gives a structure and a foundation that allows young leaders to grow into a stronger leader. It also allows them to unpack, and part of the unpacking um, is a structural format that I use, what we call a keto love. And I run them through this program called a keto love, which is helping them channel their leadership and fostering their growth. And it also helps in supporting that unpacking of where they're coming from, basically. And so, Forest Park Conservancy is one of the two where we're partnering with two organizations. In Forest Park Conservancy is a strong arm of Love is King. They're integrated from top to bottom, and with board members as well, which is a phenomenal experience that we have. But you'll see this one video, which is a testimonial reflection of one of the leaders from Forest Park Conservancy that has done 2 weeks with me up in the Arctic, and you'll hear their testimony of what they went through and their concern, and their voice, basically. So go ahead and please play that, please.
My name is Matthew McLean. I'm a tribal member of the Metapanaugia Mi'kmaq Nation. I'm also, Celtic clan, Scandinavian clan, Slavic clan. Nice to meet you. I just went on with a trip a journey with Operation Rome with Love is King, and just some of the stories that I'm bringing back to talk about. So we went up through into Alaska, into the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and through this journey we saw a lot of things. We were out in these beautiful vistas, natural habitats, almost untouched ecology, and coming back I feel very lucky to have been part of this journey and this experience, to have gotten so much knowledge and context for all of the things that are going on in this region, this bioregion. I think we got a very comprehensive view of how things work up there, why things were going on, and how things will progress in the future. And it's one thing to go watch a video on YouTube, it's one thing to read about the things affecting these areas, and then it's a whole other thing to go in and watch it happen live. It's not something you can turn off. So when you go out there and you're in one of the world's largest wetlands, you're witnessing absolutely amazing amounts of biodiversity. My one takeaway going on that journey and seeing that stuff, it gives me a lot of context as to what we're going through. It's not something you can turn off. You can't walk away from the world's issues when you're up there, because you're witnessing them and you're staring them in the face. And that's something that definitely challenged me being up there, is seeing that land and then seeing the things that are directly impacting that land right up in front of us, and you can't turn away. You can't turn it off. You can't disassociate and go watch TV. You can't run away from your problems, because your problems are there. And I highly value that experience and watching that, because it's coming back into the lower 48, and I don't want to turn that off anymore. I don't want to run away anymore. These things are here, these problems are here, and if we ignore them and try to disassociate and find things to distract ourselves, those problems will knock on our door one way or another. So a lot of it, given the challenges, it's definitely grown me, and I'm excited about the future. Our voices have always mattered. They will continue to matter, regardless if we get recognition, regardless if we get all these materialistic things. They will always matter. As long as we stand on this land, as long as we are here, we matter, and we always will.
Terrific. Thank you. That just amazing video, amazing place, and what an incredible experience for folks to be able to have. So thank you for sharing that. So one of the things that we've been, hearing about is that partnership with Forest Park Conservancy, and how they've been a really key partner for Love is King and for helping grow and expand this movement. Renee, would you like to share a bit about that partnership from FPC's perspective? And also I'll just kind of invite you both to share what that's looked like, how that collaboration has been going.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. And wow, Chad, that video, Matt, brought a tear to my eye, just because I worked so closely with Matt. He is an amazing human being and individual. And wow, that was really powerful. Thank you for that. So our relationship with Chad, it's pretty amazing. Our organization has totally changed in a lot of ways since meeting Chad and really trying to, basically, we just kind of dove in headfirst into the Love is King movement because it has so much power and energy. And with Chad behind it, you know, he's one of the most real, loving, honest, and humble people I have met. And my staff, my crew, everybody, it's really hard kind of not to kind of jump in head first. And so, you know, it's a movement that just, it's so powerful and it's so meaningful, and it's all around you. And even since Chad and I started working together, I have just seen, you know, the amazing energy that this movement has had and the changes that it's made in people's lives, and our own staff included. But yeah, when I met Chad, like he fired me up, right? Like it fired me up, and I'm a fiery person to begin with. But we had, you know, as an organization, we had started doing a lot of this work, you know, in the past 5 or 6 years. And one of my beliefs is that you don't really talk about it till you can do it and you've done it, right? And so we didn't talk a lot about the work we were doing internally because we wanted to do it first and then be able to share it. And so Chad kind of, you know, and Love is King came along at the perfect time because we were just ready to really dive in and do more. And we had done a lot of that internal work. And so I think, you know, being part of the movement and really embracing it wholeheartedly, we think about it every day, and it's with every decision that we make. And, you know, how do we make those hard choices? You know, how do we do things that maybe other people, you know, wouldn't want to do? And, you know, there's so much energy now within our organization to really do whatever we can to figure out how do we create more equitable access in Forest Park, right? And it's not just about Forest Park. That's the thing, right? It's about a region. It's about nationally, you know, how do we really start pushing this movement and creating space and being a catalyst for something bigger? And yes, it starts in Forest Park. But the hope is that, you know, we can create different kinds of models here that we're using in our partnerships, and how do we start sharing that outward from Portland on, and what does that look like? What does it mean to be a partner in the Love is King movement? Because to me, that comes with a lot of, you know, responsibility and honor to be able to have our logo on Chad's website, right? And to be part of something like Love is King. And so, yeah, I mean, we're keep doing the work and we've done some good stuff, but we're just getting started. So I'm really excited about the future too. And Chad, you have some more slides here, don't you? From this, these are some cool slides from the trip.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is we actually, in this slide here, we hiked in around 3.5 to almost 4 miles into the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. You know, we had to get through the Alaskan pipeline, and we got through that, and then we made our way. It was an interesting hike in this journey, because a lot of people who've never, well, pretty much were like, you know, you become the 1% of heading up to the Arctic Circle and having experience to walk on the tundra in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And so walking on a tundra is an experience within itself, because what a lot of people don't know is the permafrost is melting. So it's melting so greatly that when you walk on the tundra, it used to be frozen ground, and now walking on the tundra is like walking on a waterbed. The ground literally is moving like a waterbed, basically. You know, and it's a little bit scary. You know, your feet sinks in every 6 to 10 inches. You know, and it's very wet. You know, water puddles all over the place, and the ground is just literally moving underneath your feet. You know, and so that was an experience within itself, because it brought that climate change right front and center, right up in front, you know, in front of you right there. He's like, wow, this is we're studying in real time what's happening. But we made the camp here, and it was a really good camp spot. And you know, the leaders here, you know, all these leaders that you see, all the tents, they're all from Forest Park Conservancy. Forest Park, and you know, and they're amazing leaders, you know, and had amazing stories, come from different walks of life. But this is this is what we're doing here. We're bringing young leaders into wild spaces. Yes, it's on top of the world. Why on top of the world? Because that's where things start and it trickles down and it affects us right down here in Portland, Oregon. You know, how can you understand the advocacy and the leadership of being being in the conservation spaces, and understanding that climate change, when we can, you know, if you haven't spent time in a space like this, we're giving opportunity for future leaders to step into ground zero and experience what's there. And as what's there, they can come back even as stronger advocates and share that with their communities right here in Portland, Oregon, and advocate for that, you know, and educate people about that, which they are doing that right now, you know, and which is phenomenal. When they come back, they're tasked. These five BIPOC leaders, they're doing interviews with national magazines, telling their story. You know, some of them are sitting on panels now, and talking about what they've done and talking about the experience and advocating for what's going on, you know, climate change wise, et cetera. You know, and so this is empowering them on many different levels professionally, you know, and it's also enhancing their career as they move forward as well, you know. And so there's a big investment into this type of leadership that what between Forest Park Conservancy and Love is King is doing, and we're investing, you know, a really special type of investment to get them to grow their leadership into a phenomenal, you know, realm of professionalism of wherever they choose to go, basically, you know. And so, yeah, so it's this is one of our first base camps. I gave a little bit too much for your question right there, Lindsay, but yeah.
Not too much at all. It's
passion. It's passion that's coming out, you know. So
it's incredible. Every time I get to hear about this, I get another just amazing piece that I haven't heard before, and the passion is evident. So not too much at all. A really amazing collaboration and a really amazing just program and experience that you're creating there, and then to hear about that impact that it is having on the people that get to go through that is just incredible. I believe we do. Oh, go ahead, please.
Oh, I just want to say just one thing. One of the biggest things about the relationship between Love is King and Forest Park Conservancy is what we're doing. We're changing. We're changing a little bit of history here, and what I mean is that BIPOC and voices was never really allowed the invite to the table when it comes to having conversations with congressional folks, legislative bills, et cetera, that ties to our public lands, our wildlife, and our fresh water. And now we are changing that to where these voices has an opportunity to get to this table and speak about the importance and share their experience and their story. And that's really a very important thing for everyone, is being able to share their story and also show proper representation. Instead of having someone speak for themselves, they can be able to speak for themselves only, and they can talk about that. That is information that weighs in on the top decisions when we're talking about protecting our public lands and our wildlife and our fresh water. And that's very, very important for the future.
Yeah, and just to follow up quickly with that, the young leaders that were part of this program with Chad are part of our year-long workforce development program. And when we think about equitable access, you know, it's a little bit bigger for us, right? It's not just about access to recreating in the outdoors or being in outdoor spaces. It's access to careers and jobs and a voice in protecting these spaces, like Chad was saying. And so, you know, how do we provide these opportunities for BIPOC young leaders to get into these professions and to represent their voice? So I have seen an incredible change in every single one of these young leaders since they've gotten back and gone through multiple levels of kind of unpacking everything that they felt and heard and, you know, experienced in the Arctic, and then over time have shaped that and utilized that to just amplify their leadership in so many different ways. And it is incredible to see how they have taken that experience and just used it for good, not only, you know, for advocacy, but also with their own professional careers and the confidence that they've gained. It is absolutely amazing.
And I also just want to call out, I think it's remarkable to really realize that Love is King was founded in 2020, right? This is such an emergent an organization. It's such an emergent partnership. And to already be seeing that level of impact and that ripple out effect, that I personally am extremely excited to see that continue to grow and to watch that get even broader and broader. But it's just remarkable what's happened in such a short time frame with that partnership and this collaboration. So it's just incredible.
Yeah, thank you.
Terrific. I'm not sure if we had a couple of other images that you were wanting to share, or we also have some opportunity to kind of talk about a couple of the other branches of the collaborations that we've been seeing between the three organizations we have represented today. So whichever one feels the best to you for next steps, if there was other images or
the
other
slides
stories.
Get a little, I think, do we start in a different order of the slides, or?
I'm not quite sure, to be honest. So I guess I'll just take this. There we go.
Oh,
there we go.
There's our team.
Yeah. Well, I just have to be talking about the team, but you can click on through.
Yeah. Chad's a very good photographer.
Yeah. You know, can we stop here for a second, please?
Yeah.
So I want to talk about this, and there's a first reason why I put this in here, and forgive me for the folks out there that's watching if this is offend you.
You're vegetarian.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, there's a teaching aid to this, and the story to this is that you know, again, it starts off with me. You know, it starts off with the fact that BIPOC is in wild spaces that you don't see BIPOC in spaces. Number one. Reason why I say that is because even though I get into the backcountry and I'm exploring, it's still rare. It's almost kind of like, you know, oh my God, there's a black guy, you know, here, you know, and it's still rare to see that. And so I still get that. And so to start that off is that I was, this happens to me probably like my third time, but I was approached by Alaskan state trooper. And and also I was approached by a U.S. Fish and Wildlife ranger and a national park ranger, all under the umbrella of who are you? What are you doing here? You know, et cetera. And I had to explain myself, you know, constantly, you know. And so to this story here, a state trooper approached me with that same mindset, but at the same time, he was also on the radio. There was a call on the radio where there was a hunter in the same area of the country where we were at, wrongfully killed a caribou. And that description and everything, you know, the hunter turned himself in, and it came on the radio. So that state trooper, I fit the bill of that hunter, and so he came up to me and thought that I was the hunter that wrongfully killed his caribou. And after a conversation, I explained to him. I said, "No, that's not me. This is This is the organization. This is Love is King." And I explained to him everything. And so after I explained, we cleared everything up. He left, and then he came back 8 hours later. And so I'm like, they said, Chad, the state trooper, he's coming back, you know? And I said, oh, and so I approached him again, and he said, listen, I'm aware of your organization and what you guys are doing. I really appreciate the work you guys are doing. I would like to donate this caribou to your organization, you know? And so I took advantage of that, and talking with, you know, with the state trooper, you know, I came with this idea, like, you know what, this is going to be a teaching moment, and I'm going to turn this around and teach everybody how to basically skin an animal, you know, the meat, etc. And that's what you're seeing here, is that everybody took a role into learning how to field dress an animal. And you know, and there's a couple people in this group that are vegans and vegetarians, you know, and they had to go through their whole process. But through that whole process, we collectively was able to do this, and it was a phenomenal experience for everybody, once in a lifetime experience of how to field dress. Now we turn this into a positive moment, educational, and we took the meat and we made a fire. And all of us ate for the next 4 days of caribou, which was a phenomenal experience, you know. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, This is I would say this is a heritage event with Forest Park Conservancy and a board member with James Mills, and we're doing Black History Month at Forest Park, etc. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is, part of just that. I know we're kind of out of time, but, the other arm of our partnership is how do we create those spaces in Forest Park that really allow for safe and welcoming spaces and equitable access to the park, and really branching out in the kinds of, different programs that we're having. So we've been partnering with, Love is King to identify different heritage events that we're able to celebrate together. And then, FPC kind of, one of the things that we've done is create an entire programming of, culturally relevant opportunities with different organizations, and trying to really that message of everyone celebrates and exists and appreciates nature in so many different ways. And so how do we celebrate that and have opportunities for people to have access to and be in Forest Park in something that is comfortable and relevant to them. And this is really cool. This is our ancient preserve, which FPC owns. We had 2 Native elders come and do a blessing ceremony, which was absolutely amazing. And so, just kind of the other part of our partnership.
Awesome.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Terrific. Well, thank you for sharing all those, really, really interesting, like interwoven in different ways that you're partnering, different ways that you're engaging with people and helping connect them to these places and grow and learn and share their stories. And Chad, I believe that there is one more video that you were going to share, if you'd like to frame that up for us.
Yeah, thank you. This next video is from another BIPOC leader who actually was up in the Arctic. You get an opportunity to hear his lens of his experience and what he has to say, which is pretty special.
The reason I think it's important for BIPOC people specifically as a priority, and also for all people to visit wild places like the Arctic in this day and age, in this era, at this time in human history, is because the threat to our survival as a species, as a human race, regardless of what race or ethnicity or what your identity is something that is on the table. Like, it's at stake in ways that are not changing incrementally, but that are changing. Our fate as a species is changing exponentially, like day by day. The scale of the beauty is I think the most like mind-blowing thing. Like, you look the from one side of the horizon to the other is wider than I've ever observed a horizon to be. And then all the things that fill the horizon in between the sides of the horizon, the mountains that appear to be close, but if you were to actually try to walk to them, it's going to take maybe 10 to 20 times longer than your mind thought it would take to get there. Not only because distance is scaled differently here, but because the terrain is so rough and unforgiving, and it's a terrain that you have to adjust your consciousness and your mind-body relationship to. You don't dominate this terrain. It'll wreck you if you try to push through it too hard, And so all these things they teach me a lot about myself as an individual. Like, what are my limitations? What's my capacity? And I think that when you combine all that, it's just such a holistic experience, You can look up in the sky above you and watch the sun in the summer actually do a 360-degree plane around the horizon, and it never actually goes down. So then you understand that what happens here in this part of the world is a sped up and intensified microcosm of what takes place in all these other interconnected systems globally, in an ecological sense, in a biological sense, right? And that is something that we not only should understand as a matter, not just as a matter of privilege, but as a matter of our right to have an understanding of the world that we all share and that we all live in that affects our lives.
I feel like I can't see that video too many times. It's just so powerful to hear him speak about this experience and his experience. And so thank you for sharing that with us all today. And really just appreciate kind of getting this great overview of this program, of this collaboration, and the really amazing impact it's already having. And as I said before, I just can't wait to see that keep going too. And I think at this point, we're going to go ahead and transition and kind of explore another one of the branches of kind of how your three organizations are working together in different ways. And so Chad, thank you so much. And I believe we're going to welcome Susan onto the screen. So Chad, thank you for all of that.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Hello, Susan.
Hello.
Terrific. So another kind of branch of the collaborative work that's been happening within the three organizations we have here today has seen Trailkeepers of Oregon and Forest Park Conservancy really focusing on building diversity, equity, inclusion, which we frequently abbreviate as DEI, into like the strategic planning for your organizations. And so I would just love to invite you both to share kind of what that's been like for your organizations. And Renee, if you'd like to start, and you know what, I apologize. Yeah. I got myself out of order here, didn't we? For everybody watching, thank you for your patience with that. We are all continuing to learn and grow in our virtual environment and new platforms. So thanks for everybody's patience. This is actually a great moment to speak to the anti-racism trainings that you have been collaborating on. And so if you'd like to just kind of share a little bit about what those trainings and those workshops are looking like, how that's structured, what the goal of them is, that would be just terrific.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to wing it a little bit, Lindsay, because I feel like we kind of need to give a little background here before like we necessarily dive into the curriculum of these, if that's okay. Just because I think there was a partnership
absolutely
that was created before these are, kind of started. But yeah, kind of really, kind of following up on, the conversation that you were just having with Chad and I and that partnership. And, for FPC, part of that was, it's about action, right? It's not just about words. Like you really have to walk the walk. And what does that mean for us? And what additional things do we need to constantly be doing to make sure that if we're really trying to promote equitable access, what are some additional things that we can do to make these spaces safe? And that means that, everybody that represented our organization needed to have some kind of training and information and background on this work to help kind of build their skills. Like how do they recognize racist behavior? How do they interrupt it? And then how do they do that with love and respect? And we want to change the culture in Forest Park and the culture in our outdoor spaces. Then the people that are working in those spaces and volunteering in those spaces are in charge of creating a safe space. And so how do we do that? And so we decided to work with a consultant, Duran Coles, who basically helped us work through this process of, well, if you want it to be sustainable and you really want it to last over time, then as an organization, you have to learn to teach these trainings and you have to help kind of create the curriculum. And he really guided us through, this process. But one of the things that was so important was, we don't want this to just be about FPC, right? We're just one part of like this bigger whole. And so having worked with Trailkeepers of Oregon before and, wanting to do more, not just with this training, but other trainings, and really how to create something that's replicable, that's not just about us, but something that can be shared with other organizations around the region. That can be used as a base model. And so that's kind of where this partnership really strengthened and deepened, is like, how do we do this together? How do we put our staff and board members together and create these different levels of anti-racism workshops for all the leaders and volunteers within our organizations that we can then share with other organizations. And the hope was to have folks go through this workshop and then eventually go through Chad's at Keto Love. So they're getting kind of the background, and then how do you do this, in the field and implementation. And so for FPC, one of the things that we did, we made it mandatory for all of our volunteer leaders, staff, board. It's something that will be required for them to go through in order to represent FPC. And I would love for you, Susan, to talk kind of from your perspective too about the partnership and these workshops. And you're a huge, huge part of that. Thank you to Susan. He was instrumental in getting these done. So, or she, thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think, two of Trailkeepers of Oregon's core values are inclusivity and collaboration. And I think that just made complete sense for us to work with Forest Park Conservancy on this. We have a program for training that we call Trailkeepers University. And it started out as technical skills, but we've really expanded it to include leadership training for our existing and upcoming crew leaders. And we feel like the topics that we're covering in these workshops are going to be a part of that, not just for our crew leaders, but for our staff and for our board members as well. Because as Renee was saying, you really have to have that culture throughout the organization if you're going to make what we like to refer to as safe and welcoming spaces for everybody to participate in the outdoors, whether it be recreating or being stewards.
Terrific. And so at this point, I believe, do you have a couple more slides that you wanted to kind of share, getting into a little bit more about these particular workshops? Would this be a good time to invite Vicente and possibly we can get everybody back up here on the screen and be able to just ask a few more questions about this and that relationship between Forest Park Conservancy and Trailkeepers of Oregon, as well as with Love is King?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think which slide is next. I think that's really the one slide.
Okay.
And really, they're just a series of 3 workshops that we created collaboratively with our staff and some board members. We went through and developed the curriculum. There are 3 workshops that build on each other. And the idea is everyone, will eventually take all 3. And then we are in the process. They're going through peer review. So it's really nice to have our fellow colleagues being able to kind of review them. And yeah, I think what's really awesome about these workshops is that we, number one, have learned a lot along the way, but we've gotten to really build our partnership with Trailkeepers of Oregon and collaborate at a deeper level in creating these. And that vision of how do we have more of a regional base for this kind of training within all organizations, and being able to have this kind of training for all of our regional organizations and spaces. But yeah, and we get to teach it right together, our 2 organizations. And I think that's what's fun too, is how do we facilitate these conversations. And so it's been a really fun process, and also just getting to know each other better, people from all walks of life. And that was a really great just addition to it all too.
Yeah, it was a really big collaborative effort. We had probably, I think, between 16 and 24 staff, board members, and volunteers, but the 2 organizations divided up into 3 teams, each working on one of the workshops. And we met every other week for about 6 months to develop the basics of the workshop. And now we're in the review process, and the goal is to roll some of these out in their first run by the end of the year. So really exciting content that's coming up. And I love teaching, so I'm excited at the opportunity to be an instructor at some of these workshops.
I'm curious, I know you're still in the review phase, you're about to roll it out, but as you've been sharing with your teams, you've been having people review, what kind of feedback have you gotten? What kind of responses as you kind of shift to saying this is going to be a mandatory part of being a part of your program, or a leader within your team? What kind of response are you getting to that?
Ooh, good question, Lindsay.
Yeah.
I think in general, a majority of folks are really supportive of it. We do obviously have some pushback from some folks that feel like that shouldn't be mandatory, or are having a little bit of a harder time adjusting to some of the kind of new protocols we've put in and training requirements. But honestly, we're an organization that really believes in this work, and we understand how important this is, and so there is no room for folks not getting on board, honestly. And I feel like that's okay for us as an organization to say that this is important, this is part of who we are. And if folks do want to be part of the organization, then this is something that they will have to go through. And really trying to bring people along too, right? And help have those conversations of why this work is important and how what their role is in that and how important their role is in creating, these safe spaces. And so I would say majority of the time it's been really positive, but there have been some negative impacts. And, for us, it's like, well, we're sticking to what we're doing, and you lose some, but you gain more, right? So, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think aside from the bristling at the term required, I think most people, once they get into this type of training and they have on other topics, really learn a lot and approach it with a sense of curiosity. And when they realize they can do better and be better leaders, then they become much more enthusiastic about it.
Fabulous. I have a follow-up question as you're kind of on that thread of kind of developing and growing as an organization. But before I ask that, I do want to just give a quick reminder to all of you watching that if you do have any questions, please, for any of our panelists, but any of what you've heard today or anything you'd like to hear more about, please do feel free to put that in the chat, and we'd be happy to address some of those as we have our last about 15 minutes or so together. So please go ahead and send those in. My follow-up question being, actually, I think, Vicente, this was something that you were interested in speaking to, that as kind of Trailkeepers of Oregon has been working on building this into so much of their strategic planning and foundation, that there was a useful resource that you used, which was the Meyer Memorial DEI Spectrum Tool Analysis. And I'd be really interested if you could just tell us a little bit about what that tool is and kind of how your organization has used it to help identify the ways to grow within that kind of framework of DEI.
Absolutely, Lindsay. And please, if there's any slides associated with this, I don't know, just advance them as needed. But first thing I'll say is, like, it definitely takes a level of courageousness to do this type work, to be in these conversations. When you talk about each of the speakers that have spoke today, there's an incredible amount of courageousness that takes moving the needle forward on a subject that has been somewhat stagnant throughout the fabric of American history. So when you talk about, in this day and age, approaching DEI work, looking at inclusiveness, kind of going against the grain of what people are used to, shifting a paradigm, it's something that it takes time in order for that to take place. So with that being said, TKO as an organization, starting from the top down with our board of directors, we had to look at DEI work from a authentic approach. And we found this great tool through Meyer Memorial Trust. It's a DEI spectrum that kind of outlines kind of where you're at. It's a measuring stick, if you will, of where you're at in terms of what you're authentically doing in order to incorporate DEI into your organization. And it's not something that's an additive. I think for many years, many decades, people think of it as an additive. Oh, we have to do DEI now. Let's do this, or let's kind of supplement DEI by doing X, Y, Z. But when you're truly doing DEI work, it has to be interwoven in everything that you do. And it has to start with leadership. So our board of directors, we were able to have at our board retreat, a genuine conversation about where our organization was at. And I think when you approach this with the right heart and right mind, you begin to realize that you're not as far off as you would think you were, right? You may not have been doing it intentionally, but there are some steps that were taken to be inclusive within the organization. I think nature teaches us that naturally. When you talk about the biosphere and how each element of the outdoors works together and there's a natural flow. So we looked at this spectrum, kind of looked at different areas of where we're at on whether we're using DEI our recruitments, whether we're using DEI in decision making, policy, are we collecting DEI data? All of these different elements help us make decisions on where to incorporate more support and where to highlight successes where they take place. So this spectrum, we sat down at our board retreat and kind of all took a poll of where we believe we were at. And based off of that measurement, we got a true picture of where the organization was, got a lot of good dialogue on where we're at and where we want to go. And it was just a great opportunity for us to authentically look at a true value. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Everybody? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we're good.
It was a true assessment of where our organization was and where we need to go based upon this Meyer Memorial Trust Spectrum tool. So that's how we came to look at that tool, Lindsay, and incorporate it into the organization. And it was a very good experience. So it may not be the DEI Spectrum tool for your organization, but you should always look at what tools are available to measure your DEI success. So.
Terrific. Thank you. And that does sound like, a great fit for your organization. It's great that those tools are out there. And I would definitely encourage any organizations that are looking at it, at really focusing on this, to explore those tools. And that's a great one to start with. A big part of what I love that you just said was talking about that kind of integration of DEI into everything. It's not something you're doing in addition to or separate from. And we had a great comment from one of our participants actually saying that it's been cool to hear the TKO trailhead orientation talk at work parties evolve, even when delivered by a long-term volunteer crew leader. And so, Susan, if that's something that you'd like to just kind of speak to, how that has progressed and evolved.
Yeah, I'd love to. Our safety talk has, in its earlier days, it really focused on physical safety. And over time, we started mentioning mental and emotional safety, but we didn't really specifically call out examples of that. And so over the past, I think for maybe a year now, probably, we've had what we call our safety talk preamble, which includes a land acknowledgement, which, expresses the privilege we have to be on lands, not just the land, but the land, the water, the sky, and the spirit world that was forcibly taken from the Indigenous people, and to honor them as not just the original stewards, but the ongoing stewards of the land. Then we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement saying that, acknowledging that not all folks feel welcome and safe in the outdoors, and we want to be part of the solution to that. And then it's not always possible for people because of issues like racism, bias, and hate. And then we want to be part of the solution to those issues, and just saying that we won't tolerate speech or expressions that target individuals, whether it's because they're in a protected class or an unprotected class, And then after that, we have our tough caring contract, which empowers our crew leaders and our participants, volunteers as well, to intervene if they see somebody saying something or doing something like falling into an act of implicit bias or something else, and acknowledging that those interventions are acts of caring and concern about each other's mental safety, and just wanting us to be better people and provide a caring environment. And then lastly, indicating that the three ways people can address a situation if it arises is to intervene directly, to ask a crew leader, and then we always send out a post-event survey where people can address things anonymously after the fact if they don't feel comfortable addressing it in the moment at the event.
Terrific. Thank you.
Can I add something to that, Lindsay?
Of course.
So, and what Susan spoke to are a lot of the successes. Like after we did that DEI spectrum, we saw a lot of areas where we can improve and data that we needed to collect in order to make sure that we were making the right decisions and on the right course of inclusivity. Hopefully I said that right. But it also identifies gaps, right, where we need to improve. So this was all a result of a DEI work plan. Like the spectrum allotted us the decision making to come up with a work plan specific, a strategic plan on DEI, and a lot of the things that Susan spoke to were incorporated in that work plan on these are where we have opportunities to implement success, whether it's a survey, whether it's the land acknowledgement. These are things that we're doing. But again, here's some gaps or other areas where we can collect more data to make better decisions. And that's the post party survey that Susan spoke to as well. So again, that spectrum helped us identify not only that we needed to activate this work plan, but really helped us identify where we could be successful. And then where areas of opportunity or growth in terms of DEI, because it's ongoing work. It's something that never ends. None of us are perfect. None of us will be masters at this because DEI is always evolving. So we want to make sure that we're staying on the right course in terms of that decision making. So.
Terrific. So a big piece of what I keep hearing, kind of the through line here is that continuing to evolve, continuing to grow, continuing to develop, with these new collaborations, these new partnerships, even, a new nonprofit for Chad, right? And a whole new organization. And I've been hearing a lot throughout all of what you've shared today, and thank you for all of it, is kind of that idea of and I'm going to throw this question out to you with not having prepped you for it at all, but I'd love to hear from you as we wrap up. As we keep hearing about kind of starting here in the Portland area, starting with, your particular organizations, starting with doing those trainings to your organizations, or kind of, but then growing that and having that expand and that impact expand. I would just love for each of you to share briefly, what do you see as the what do you see as the goal? What scale, what would you like to see kind of, I don't want to say the end point of this because I don't think there ever is one, but what would you like to see in terms of scaling and how this is going to help engage other organizations, other areas of the country, kind of what do you see as the future of the work that you're doing right now? Which is a big question that I didn't leave you a ton of time for, but.
I can speak to that real quickly, just on 2 points. I think one, with these workshops we're doing, they can be done online. And so that doesn't limit our audience to just FPC and TKO leadership and volunteers and staff and board. These can be shared and put on for other organizations, and we can spread the word that way. And then I think just as we partner with other organizations in our stewardship work, leading by example. I've partnered with other organizations and they've seen our safety talk and they've been like, wow, we really appreciate that. Can you send us a copy of it so we can adapt it to our own organization? So I think, being able to extend these trainings beyond our own organizations, and then, just leading by example and also learning by example, right? We're not perfect. We're not inventing everything ourselves. There's plenty to learn from other folks and organizations. And, being humble and taking feedback as it comes in and trying to do our best.
I'll dive in right here and then we'll pass it to Renee and Chad to close. So building on what Susan said, the name of this whole workshop today this presentation is Dismantling Systemic Racism Through Shared Stewardship. So the ultimate goal is let's keep dismantling. Let's keep taking off brick by brick this wall and this glass ceiling that has been built to hold people back, particular people back. So I think that's the ultimate goal, is just to continue to dismantle. How we do that? Through collaboration with organizations such as Forest Park Conservancy, with organizations such as Love is King, TKO, other organizations that may be watching today. I mean, we need to work together and learn from each other, as Susan said, in order to continue to dismantle. Some other values that TKO have that I know we all share is appreciation for the outdoors, right? We're stewards of this land. Indigenous people maintained this land prior to us. They kept it in a good state where we can enjoy it today, but we want it for the next generation. My children, your children, and everyone else's children's children should be able to appreciate and value. And they're gonna look back on our generation on what did we do in order to make sure that this was available to them in the future. And it takes leadership to do that. That's another TKO value, like courageousness and leadership, beyond just the book, because it takes a lot of money to bring to fund a book and print a book. But I started a YouTube show that was free, My Natural Life, and just continuing to uplift the message of stewardship, diversity, and conservation, making sure we're uplifting those and continuing to wave the flag. So again, just those values are something that we need to reiterate, especially the collaboration piece, in order to dismantle systematically. It was systematically built. Now it has to be systematically dismantled. And I think that's a long-term goal. I'll pass it to Renee or Chad.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, thank you. I think, future, it lies and married really well with what Susan and Vicente is talking about. Love is King, through Love is King is an organization. It's a new organization. The future of moving forward is moving away from the organization and moving into a movement, a national movement across the United States. And within this movement, it's a shared movement that has opportunity and support, that welcomes partnerships, like-minded, to step in and grow this movement into helping to support BIPOC on our public lands, on our city parks across the entire United States. To do that, it requires a link of strong leadership from all walks of life to step in, because this kind of movement is built off of community. It's built off of the shared understanding of that everybody has that right to roam through nature, or you could say we call it the freedom to roam, and it's an undeniable human right. And you have that right, and we want everybody to be able to have that right and exercise their right in outdoors with their families, with their friends.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you. And I know we're getting very close to time. Renee, I want to give you the opportunity to share a quick thought if you'd like to.
Yeah, I mean, all kind of great ending comments and thoughts. I guess the only thing that I would add is, my hope with all that we are all doing is that we really continue to build awareness too, and build additional partnership, because I think building awareness and hopefully being a catalyst and an inspiration for other organizations to be doing this work, because it's so much deeper. When you think about the future leadership, and as organizations and communities, we're building this leadership, and it goes so far beyond DEI trainings and, kind of different boxes folks check. Like, when you're looking internally at your organizations and you have 60%, 65% BIPOC staff, which we do, those power dynamics, and how are you building your leaders? And it goes so much deeper than just that surface DEI work. And I think with this powerful movement and work that we're doing, my hope is that organizations become more aware and take a deeper look at who they are and their culture, and really start kind of changing that internal dynamic and culture, so that we are shifting and we are building these leaders and giving them all that they deserve, and changing that power dynamic. So that's kind of, I hope we're a catalyst for something deeper too, not just broader.
Fabulous. I just would like to take this opportunity to say thank you so much to all of you for not only the work that you're doing, but for coming today and sharing your experiences, sharing your, your missions, your goals, your work, everything with us and with all the people watching today. I really deeply appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who joined us to watch today's panel. And I would encourage you to continue to check out, Forest Park Conservancy, Love is King, Trailkeepers of Oregon, and the work that they're doing, and all the exciting things that I know will be coming. This is recorded if anybody'd like to go back and reference or hear again anything that we've shared today. And otherwise, just thank you again to the summit for hosting us. And I hope that everybody continues to have a great time with the rest of the 2021 Outdoor Rec Summit. Thank you each, and everybody have a terrific day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.